welcome back to Okashicon Online. I am your favorite host. Okay, there's only two of them. Don't tell CW I said that. But I am Juliann with two N's and no E. You will need to remember that later in case you need to send me an email. But we are here today with Japan Stories, which is our monthly conversation about cool things in, from, or about Japan. Today we're going to be talking about pop-up markets, flea markets, farmers markets, temple and shrine sales, places to buy, secondhand goods. I'm not necessarily going to talk about thrift stores, but if you have questions about thrift stores, absolutely hit me up in the chat because I can answer that. But the thrift store experience in Japan is not all that different from the thrift store experience in the United States. So I didn't want to waste your time with that. Remember that Okashicon is a registered nonprofit. We are coming to you free because we are a charity. But if you would like to support us, there are multiple ways that you can do that. One is you can subscribe to us on Twitch, and therefore you will not see these ads. Twitch is getting more aggressive about these ads. I apologize, but there's nothing we can do about it. That is how they make their money. Hello to Raina. Hello to Pixie. Hello to Misty. I'm so glad to see y'all. Anyone else hanging out in the chat, feel free to chime in. I think we are still doing the promotion where if you comment or send, and do a little thing later in the show, you might be able to get a Studio Ghibli postcard. Hello, Jacob. I'm not going to try to pronounce your name. Hello, Ashley. Hi, everybody. I really appreciate you guys being here. I know you have other things to do, especially on weekends, but I hope that you guys will be entertained. And please remember, ask questions at any time, make comments. This is an interactive show. That's why we do it live, because otherwise, I could just show you a 15-minute video and go on. So I really appreciate you being here. So as I was saying, the Okashicon is a registered charity. There are several ways to support us. You can do a Twitch subscription, which if you're an Amazon Prime member, you can get one subscription per month totally free. So if you're an Amazon Prime member, it will cost you nothing, and it gives us a little bit of money. It helps us pay for our expenses and keep things going in the background. Another thing is you can give us bits, which are basically ways that you can spend micro amounts, a couple cents here and there on Twitch, and just give us a cheer, like give us $1, something like that. Again, all the proceeds go back into funding this channel. So, we can bring you cooler and more exciting stuff. We do have some tech expenses. So, it's not much, but if you'd like to support us, you can. The final option would be, because we are a federally registered charity, if you go on Amazon Smile, which now works on your apps as well, if you designate Okashicon as your registered charity for Amazon Smile, we will get 0.5% of your Amazon purchases. I know that is a tiny amount, but everything does add up, and we really appreciate your support. But even if you don't want to do any of that, we still appreciate you. We are so glad to have you with us. Please remember to at least follow us so that you get notified every time we go live. And speaking of going live, remember that we have 3 shows every month, and sometimes occasionally more. We have Anime Afternoons, which are on the first Saturday of the month, every month now, and they are at 3 p.m. Central Time. We're currently in Central Daylight Time, but we will be switching to Central Standard Time in November, but we're always going to stay at 3 p.m. So if you're outside the United States and don't understand the daylight savings time issue, you may need to use calculator or like world time zone clock, things like that. I know there's a couple of you who do tune in from other places, and that can get a little bit challenging. But yeah, first Saturday of the month in Texas time is Anime Afternoons. Next program will be Team Waifu, which we have Lester Kennedy Cosplay here. So we're really looking forward to talking about Rumiko Takahashi's work, especially with the new Inuyasha sequel. So we're excited about that. So I'm waving to the chat as if like the chat can see me, but you guys can see me. Hi, chat. Hi, Ashley. We also have Make Your Monday, which is another presentation by me, which is on the second Monday of the month. And we're going to be talking about Boro and visible mending this time. And I will be sneaking in some sneak peeks during the program today of sort of traditional Boro. And also on the second Sunday of the month, we have the demo disc guy. Well, we have the Ninja Hell production guys who are doing demo discs, and so they're playing through some 90s vintage era sample games. So if you're really into vintage gaming, that is a fun and entertaining place to be. Although I still claim that I'm your favorite host because I do more shows. Ha! No, CW's not watching this. I can say whatever I want. Shh. Okay, you can tell him. He can compete. We can have it as fair showdown. I'm fine with that, but I still do 3 shows a month. So, anyway, to wrap things up, obviously on the 4th Sunday of every month, we have Japan Stories, which is where you are right now. So we really appreciate you guys. Please remember that if you weren't here live, or if you have a friend who might want to watch this later, things do go up on the Akashic on YouTube pretty much straight away. And if it's not on our YouTube, it is always on our website. Because sometimes if we have clips from anime, especially with Anime Afternoons, YouTube doesn't let us play them, but they are available on the Akashicon website. So all of this is generally available for your friends and family afterwards. Send them along, have them come back, and at least, if they're only interested in a certain section, they can fast forward through. So we are here as a service to promote Japanese culture to Central Texas and the rest of the world. And anything we can do to get more eyeballs helps us complete our mission. So last thing, you see on the bottom of the screen, the ticker that has my email address on it, which is julianninjapan@gmail.com. If you would like to get an email notification of when my shows are coming up or any Akashicon Online shows are coming up, and you don't want to rely on, like Facebook or Instagram to show you these things, because I know the algorithms sometimes get messed up, send me an email. I will put you on my personal mailing list. I promise I will only send you things that are related to these shows, and you can always know what's coming up and have an idea of what we're doing. So I think that's all I'm going to talk about for the moment. I'm going to get into my slides. We have slides, we have videos, we have show and tell. We have cool stuff for you today. So except do I have that in the right way? Yeah, I do. There we go. Y'all, I have been having the craziest month as far as sleep, so I'm still waking up, still drinking caffeine. If I get a little strange, just, shout at me in the chat and say, you've gone off on a tangent somewhere. Today we're going to talk about markets, and I mean the pop-up kind of market. I don't mean Tsukiji market or Nishiji market. I mean the permanent markets, because to me, I feel like the name market is something that we Westerners gave to that, as opposed to something that really is a sort of a traditional periodic market. I could be wrong, but anyway, I'm not talking about Tsukiji. I'm not talking about Nishiji. If you're interested in Nishiki market, I cannot pronounce it, from Kyoto, please go back to my Japan stories from 2 months ago, where I do give you some sample of that when I was looking at knives and food and other things. I have not been to Tsukiji or the new Toyosu market, but after my next trip, maybe I can show you some of that. But today we are going to talk about markets that only happen maybe 1 day a week, 1 day a month, or less common. So if that's what you are interested in, you are absolutely in the right place. And I know some of you have already mentioned being interested in kimono and Japanese textiles, like what I'm wearing, and 100% this is the place to be for that kind of information, because I scoured Japan in so many places to find cool stuff. So hopefully you will ask questions and I can give you more information. And I will be talking about suggested prices at the end, because some of these markets are kind of a ripoff, and I will give you a heads up on some of those. So, sorry, I'm just looking at the chat. Y'all can talk amongst yourselves. That's perfectly fine. And again, remember, if you want to grab my attention, I will check on the chat every so often. So those of you who are new, if you see me looking off to the side, I am just checking on the chat. But let's look at my slides. You see, I have new templates this month. I think they're really pretty. I got them for free online. So if you like my new template, please give me a thumbs up in the chat. I didn't do any work on them, but I think they're nice. Anyway, let's talk about the pop-up market types that I will be discussing today. I'm going to be talking about farmers markets. Now, if you're like me and, Generation X, and you grew up in the 80s, a farmers market, I grew up in the South, so that was, a bunch of old guys at the bed of a pickup truck. They just put the tailgate down and sell you crates of vegetables. That's not what farmers markets are like in America anymore, and that's not what this farmers market is like in Japan either. Nowadays, you can go to I live up in the Lakeline area in Northwest Austin, and our farmers market has, 4 different breeds of hand-reared duck and, 9 different kinds of artisanal cheeses, and, it's handcrafted, small batch, locally produced, but gourmet foods as opposed to just fruit and veg. I mean, there's always some fruit and veg, but it tends to be like high-end special stuff. That is the type of farmers market I will be showing you about today. I also talk some about specialty markets, especially antique markets, but there's also like a Kauai flea market that I have not yet been to thanks to a typhoon. But there are certain other special markets. I will tell you how to find out where they are, when they are, and if that is the type of thing that piques your interest and you want to build a trip around it, we will be talking about how to find them. And then finally, I'm going to talk about traditional temple sales. Now, temple sale is a misnomer. Some of them are shrine sales. It seems that, not only are temples and shrines a little bit similar to each other in the function that they hold in Japanese culture. I don't mean religiously, but I'm saying, if you want to go request a good passing score in your test, you may go to a shrine, you may go to a temple. They both sell similar luck charms and things like that. Well, in this case, they also both have markets that are available. And so some people will call them temple sales, some people call them shrine sales. That term is interchangeable, and just depending on the city, it may be a temple, it may be a shrine, or Kyoto, it's both. But I'm just going to use temple sales as a shorthand. I just want you guys to be clear that, it could be any type of religious facility in Japan. So first, I want to show you the farmers market that I attended in Tokyo. It is at the United Nations University in Omotesando. For those of you who are familiar with Harajuku fashion, you may remember that there are 2 main streets. There's Takeshitadori, which goes not exactly east and west, but, mostly east and west, and then there's a big north-south street called Omotesando, which is also where all the luxury shopping is. It heads up into Ginza, so your Rolex stores, your Cartier stores, all the really posh shops that no one can afford to shop in. That is all up and down Omotesando, but also at Omotesando is United Nations University, which has this particular farmers market. It also has vintage clothing and some antiques in it. Now, this is an unusual market because it is Saturday and Sunday of every week. This is very, very rare. In fact, it's one of the only ones that I know of that is absolutely weekly. But again, I think because it was based primarily around food, that's the type of products that may not still be good a month later. So it's really nice that you can go. So no matter when you are in Tokyo, if you're there over a weekend, you can definitely check out this market. Let's show you some photos. I will have a little bit of video later, but unfortunately, video of markets just tends to be a bunch of people and their backpacks and their rear ends and the back of their head, things like that. So I tried to get some photos just to give you an example. This was a beautiful sunny day in April. Probably lots of other people were out looking at Hanami, although I think it was a little bit past the cherry blossom peak time. So this looks a little bit empty, but as the day goes on, and certainly as you get to the food trucks, the best pizza I have had in Japan was at one of these food trucks, and it was there 1 week, and then we never saw it again. I don't know how they choose which food trucks are there, but if you're there, sometimes you may get lucky and have this. It's a food truck that has its own wood-fired oven in it. It's absolutely heavenly. But today we're going to talk about more of the regular stuff. So they have, you can see it's kind of crowded. It's not so crowded that you can't get around until you get into the areas where they're serving food. I think I'm missing some. No, I just had things out of order. So there is the food section when you first walk in, and I think I got my slides a little bit out of order, so I may have to jump around as I'm explaining this. They had fantastic artisanal pickles. They have an entire store that's just a guy that does pickled vegetables, and they do samples so you can be tasting them. We had amazing stuff. We had pickled mushrooms and pickled lotus root and carrots and all kinds of things. I mean, you know that Japan is very famous for its pickles, and they had probably 50 different kinds in little jars. So if that is the type of food that you're interested in, which it is for me, that was amazing. We also had a guy who had handmade ginger syrup, which you then could dilute or put into other drinks. So like ginger syrup and milk was surprisingly fantastic. I also got one that was like an Earl Grey tea that was like just a little cordial. So it was a condensed version of it. And certainly you could have the tea and then put milk in it or add soda and have like, you know, Earl Grey tea flavoring added to so many different options. It was really amazing. We kept going regularly. We have a comment saying, I hope to make one of these on my next trip. We may stay for 3 weeks. I am so glad to hear that, because definitely, if you are staying in Japan long enough to be in like an Airbnb or an apartment or something where you have your own kitchen, definitely go there. You can make some fantastic, easy meals for yourself. Like you can just pick up some fruit and veg. They had the sea grapes, I think it is, from Okinawa, which I absolutely love. They had that there. They had all kinds of pre-prepared items. I mean, I'm not going to say they were completely pre-prepared. You maybe had to heat them, or you weren't going to eat them on the spot. But they had a lot of easy but delicious options that you could take back and have with your rice, or have in your apartment, or your Airbnb, whatever your kitchen might be. There's also a section underneath the cover, which is the antiques, and I will come back to this, talking about this in a minute. And then in the back, this was kind of strange. If you are under the age of 25, you may really like the back section because it is the retro vintage era, and is basically, oops, there goes my light, but I think you guys can see me. It is basically the 90s exploded, and all of the hip, trendy, cool young people. As you can see, I picked out just a couple of them, and they're really fun and funky outfits. All of the young, trendy people were there trading vintage clothing. I felt so old because honestly, it was like my attic just kind of came and threw up all over the place. And a lot of Generation X people like myself come out of this market thinking, I could fund an entire trip to Japan if I just brought all my ratty old t-shirts from the 90s. And it's true. I mean, look at that one. That's just a ratty old Nike sweatshirt. Nothing special, just a Nike sweatshirt. And I bet they were selling that for $50. So it was a little bit entertaining. And I had that slide in there twice, which is really disappointing. I don't know why. I will say that if you are looking at vintage textiles, kimono, haori, you see the jackets there, don't buy them at this particular market. They are incredibly overpriced. They know that some Westerners are there to buy stuff. There are about, I'd say, 8 or 10 antique stalls in this market, as opposed to the sort of 80 different food options and probably 30 of the vintage clothes. These people are there to gouge tourists, basically. So unless you just see a particular item that you're just so completely in love with, you have to have that one thing. I would not spend your money at the antique section of this market. The food section, 100%, cannot recommend enough. The vintage retro section at the back, which has its own DJ going, which you'll see a little bit of in the video clip we have in a minute. Sure, that's fine. If you're really into 90s fashion, it's a great place in Tokyo to get it. I would suggest you're probably better off in the United States, just going to any old thrift store. But, it's interesting to go to, and certainly the food trucks back there and the cocktail trucks are really cool. But, the antique section is definitely there to take advantage of unsuspecting tourists. So we have a short video clip that I have put together. I will be talking over it, but if we could roll the first video clip, let me see if I can get that up. This is just a small sample. So this is the food section. As you can see, there are 4 long rows of these stalls. So there's loads and loads of them. There's, vegetable sections, just traditional vegetables, as you can kind of see over on the right-hand side. There's the pickled people. They were pretty sold out at that point. They also had like noodles, so they'd have like handmade ramen. They had sauces, jams. Sometimes you see this in basket sellers. They had, I think a honey store. They had locally raised honey. all kinds of like packets, sauce mixes, things like that. I love this guy in the hat. I don't know why he's wearing that hat. I just thought he was pretty amusing. And he, again, is showing off these sauce mixes. This is the back. I'm going to stay quiet for a minute. This is the DJ. It is so loud in this back section, you can barely breathe. But all day during this market, you've got live DJs in the back here. And that is all the vintage, retro. Look at that. Those shirts are boring. I mean, I don't know why people are spending a lot of money on this stuff, but it's very popular right now. So yeah, I don't know if y'all could tell, but some of those t-shirts at the very end, they were just sort of random English wording. I mean, from some kind of like bar, souvenir t-shirts, probably university stuff. So literally the junk that we have in our attics is what's selling over there. And they're selling for $30, $40 a piece. When my then 18-year-old niece was looking at that, I really just was about to hang my head in despair, going, why would people pay this kind of money for our old junk? But there is a huge market. But that is my quick summary of this particular United Nations University market. I am actually trying to keep today's program down to about an hour. Everyone thinks that's not possible. It's probably not, but I'm just giving you a quick overview because this is actually not the coolest or most interesting of the markets. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and pop them in the chat. I will come back to them. But for the most part, I just wanted to show you this is an interesting market, and it's one that is very accessible because it's open so much of the time. But definitely remember that it gets super busy from about 2 o'clock on because of the food trucks, and the lines will just be round the block. So if you do want to eat at the food trucks, get there fairly early in the day. Let me move on in my slides. Oops, I got to actually get into the right window. There we go. Let's talk a little bit about specialty markets. So some of these will be they're basically very specific to a certain topic. The majority of them will be antique related. There are some that are enormous antique markets, but you know, and that's, I guess, what a lot of people think of when they think of flea market. But there's also the Kawaii Flea Market, which is at Sunshine City Mall in Ikebukuro. It is twice a year. It did not happen last October while the Akashikon people were there because we'd had a typhoon. And so it was still very, very heavily raining, and a lot of things were rained out and we didn't get to go. But that's definitely on our agenda. Hopefully we can get there next year because, again, it's in October and sometime in the spring. Now, I have the links that are available here. These will be posted on our website afterwards. So the Tokyo Cheapo website, if you're not familiar with that, I cannot recommend this website more. They have lists of sort of what's on in Tokyo this week. So it'll be all the markets that are on that particular weekend, you know, regardless of what the topic is or, you know, what the specialization is. They also have descriptions of some of these individual markets. So that's why I have the page for the Kawaii Flea Market. They also just are a wonderful resource for people who are in Tokyo looking to save money. So if you want to go to a Michelin-starred restaurant, but you know it's pricey, some of these have great lunch specials, and so it's really nice to sort of go, oh, so there's this Michelin-starred restaurant, but they have a $10 lunch special. How amazing is that? I see Lester Kenny Cosplay is agreeing on Tokyo Cheapo. They are just one of the best websites that I can recommend. They also have Japan Cheapo now. That is, I'll be honest, it's not everywhere so far, but they are trying to branch out. So they do have Kansai, they have, you know, Kyoto and Osaka and some other places, and they are branching out into other cities. So even if you're not going to Tokyo specifically, I would check out Japan Cheapo, and you can get on their mailing list. And so every week you'll just get notifications of what the events coming up. These events are usually inexpensive and mostly free. So it'll be like, I couldn't find the video, but there was this one weird sort of festival. I'm using festival in quotation marks because I didn't quite know what it was. It was some interesting hipster, not even hipster, hippie festival where they had, the sort of fire jugglers, and it wasn't like as cool as the Renaissance Fair. It was just a bunch of people wearing a lot of ganja merchandise. I don't know how else to put it, but that was, one of the markets one of the activities that we stumbled into because it was free and because we found it on Tokyo Cheapo. So highly, highly recommend that website. There's the Oedo Antique Market, which has its own website, and I'll be showing you that one next, and that one is a more regular one. And then just for a list of flea markets, there is another website called Best Living Japan. And I need to tell you a little bit of a caveat about this website, and I need to put it very delicately. The website itself is amazing. The information on there is 100% solid, and it's very useful. It's great for finding, fabric stores or finding especially things to do with small children. It's geared towards families of expats, so English-speaking people who are living in Tokyo, sometimes beyond Tokyo, but basically centering around the Tokyo and Yokohama areas. And so their website is phenomenal. However, their main business is in teaching classes, and my experience was not the best. That could just be that was to my taste. I'm just saying that I can really recommend the website, but use your own judgment before purchasing some of their other offerings. They have a really great space and facility, and it's really nice, and they have an Airbnb there, which was really cool. But I don't want you to think that because I've recommended any of these websites that I also recommend their products. That's the same for any of them. I'm just telling you this is the information that I would recommend. I'm glad, Rena, that you are finding out about Tokyo Cheapo, because that really, we were there for 2 months the first time last year. My first trip last year, not our first time to Tokyo. And we discovered it before we went. And it was so cool to just get all of these emails every single week. Best of Japan Living also does, I think, a monthly newsletter that'll talk about events that are coming up as well. And so you would find out all these really interesting activities that you probably never would have been informed about otherwise. And they do have their year-long calendar up. So if you're planning on going like in October, or you're planning on going in April, you can check what was on last year at that time. And a lot of these are recurring annual activities, or more often than that. A lot of these markets will be monthly, or there's one in Hanazono Shrine that is on Sundays. Some Sundays, they don't really say which. Most Sundays. It's a little confusing, but I did not know that Tokyo Cheapo has a YouTube channel now. Thank you. That is absolutely news to me, but I have not been watching YouTube for a little while because most of my time is spent on developing our presentations. But I will check that one out, because I do have to say, I will move into this one. So you see here that I said the Oedo Antique Market. I do not have a video for the Oedo Antique Market because my recommended YouTube channel of the month is Only in Japan, which is produced by John Dobb, who is a wonderfully professional presenter. I mean, he used to be in cable television, and now he does YouTube as a full-time job. And he has a fantastic live walkthrough of this market that I saw before I ever went there. And so when I was looking through my videos of it, I was like, yeah, my videos aren't any better than his. So I'm just going to send you to Only in Japan, and you can look at his walkthrough of the Oedo Antique Market. And then he also is going to other shops in the same area. This is near Tokyo Station. He found a wonderful knife store. It's all in the same video. It was really cool. So, but pretty much anything that he has is worth watching, in my opinion. And I certainly support him on Patreon as well. So let's go back to looking at the Oedo Antique Market. Now, as I said, this is quite near Tokyo Station, which is the main train station. It's where the Shinkansen comes in and out of Tokyo. And if you look for the Shake Shack, believe it or not, this is all in this outside area next to the Shake Shack. So that's an easy reference that you can find. Your GPS will find it quite easily. This particular facility has a name. It's on the website. I don't really remember what the name of this plaza is, but I found that was a little bit harder to find. But if I just navigated to the Shake Shack, it was really easy. So This market is on 2 Sundays of the month. Sorry, I'm looking at in the chat, and yes, when Only Japan did a live walkthrough of the Sega 2 for the last time, that was very sad. And in fact, they have done one. A couple of people, I think both Taipei Eats and Only Japan, did one of the amusement park, theme park that is going out of business in Asakusa to become Harry Potter World. So I was very upset by that too. There's lots of changes in Japan, as definitely always happens, but COVID is unfortunately sort of hastening the demise of some of these older properties and facilities. But back to the Oedo Antique Market. This is on twice a month. I think it's the second and fourth Sunday of the month, or first. I'm not 100% sure on that. I just know that it's 2 Sundays of the month. I will say that even though it says it's open until a certain time, if you're not there by 2, they're already starting to pack up. So this is definitely something to go no later than lunchtime if you really want to see the whole thing. And I think there are about 80 to 100 different vendors there. There are 2 main aisles and it goes around the corner. So I didn't quite get a count. Some markets are small. So like Hanazono Shrine, the one that's on pretty much every Sunday, although they say pretty much every Sunday in quotation marks, they don't say exactly which Sundays, but that has 20 to 25 stalls at it. I never went, even though my school, my language school, was in Hanazono Shrine. I never came back on a Sunday because I was like, it's only 20 stalls. It's not really worth my time. But this one was really nice. It had some top quality antiques. Now, when you talk about flea markets and antique markets, I'm going to digress here for a little bit. When I was growing up, I had an uncle who ran a flea market. And so my experience was, it was somebody who went around to garage sales. They were a professional picker. Like if you watch, literally pickers on the History Channel, that type of thing. These are people who have very carefully curated these collections. These are going to be top quality and they're going to be top dollar as well. And if you're interested in Japanese textiles, they know you're interested in Japanese textiles and they're going to charge you absolutely, the highest the market will bear on these. The jacket that I'm wearing today is from there, but it happens to be the same price as the others. So I'll show you that when we get to the show and tell. But some of the other things they had there were very expensive. Let me see what else I've got coming up in the slides. Here's some of the sashiko. So for those of you, I know that Reina was in the sashiko presentation that I did about 2 weeks ago. These were some traditional pieces of, we've got one boro on the left and one sashiko on the right. Those were hundreds of dollars a piece. In fact, I think I saw one that was like $3,000. So you are not going to find a bargain here. You're going to find some very exquisite pieces here, absolutely. But if you're on a budget, this is not the place to go. They had some things that were not too bad, but they weren't really, how do I put this? They knew what Westerners were interested in. Even though the majority of the people attending the market seemed to be native Japanese, they knew what the market rate was, and they were not there to give anyone any kind of discount or deal. And haggling is not really a thing. Maybe if you buy 2 things, they might give you a slight discount, but this is not like other parts of Asia where you're expected to start haggling off the bat. Even in markets, that's not really cool. So yeah, if you want to buy gorgeous things that have very high price tags on them, this is a good market. But if you're looking for inexpensive, this is not the place for you. Here's some more of these wonderful textiles. They had, I stopped at every single stall that had them. These are gorgeous. You'll see that some of this is ikat weaving, which is also has a kasuri. Kasuri is the Japanese term for it, which I have studied. I do have a small piece of that I will show you. But for the most part, these particular pieces of textiles would range $20, $25 just for the small offcuts. I managed to pick up a few pieces that were smaller and less expensive, but I had to hunt really hard for them. They do have the obijime. Now, those were quite reasonable in price. The kimono that they had there were fairly expensive. And I will say these were mostly polyester kimono. So we will talk about the price of a polyester sort of Showa era. Showa era is sort of the 1940s and 1980s, and technically it started a little bit before that. But basically, you're looking at your post-war era until 1989, when polyester was a big thing. And so that type of kimono you'll find everywhere. But these people had very high prices for them. So again, I wouldn't recommend. But the obijime, which are the cords that you can see there, which I did get two of from that particular store, those are reasonably priced. And so those are usually $3, $4. And this particular store did have a tub of them. In fact, you can see one that I actually bought. I can see that still in the tub there. Two that I actually bought are in that photo. Those were, I think, about $3. So that was a good price. So I don't mean to imply that you should not go to this market because everything is way too expensive. I'm just saying be careful, because for the most part, they do have the higher end of stuff here. They had one guy that had mother of pearl button section. My mom's a big button collector, so she was thrilled with the stuff I got her. But again, some of these packets of buttons, you can see they were like 1,700 yen. So that's $16, $17 for a pack of buttons. Now mother of pearl buttons are worth it in my opinion, but again, not a bargain. Now, what I did like, they had this yarn producer, and these were all natural hand-dyed yarns, and I did buy some of those indigo yarns, and $8 for a skein of cotton yarn is a very reasonable price. So again, use your best judgment, but because it is on twice a month, hopefully you will be able to, go there. It's definitely worth walking around, and if you're interested in prints and maps and things like that, they did have a very good selection of, and they were all types of prices involved. So, from very inexpensive all the way to very, mind-boggling expensive. But I find that prints are very difficult. Prints and ceramics are things that I do collect, but they're difficult to bring back home in pristine condition. So I did not purchase any. They also had, all the sort of usual stuff that you would expect at an antique market. So these are some tools, kitchenware, ceramics, all kinds of cool stuff. And again, once you find a jumbly box of something, that's going to be a better price than if you see something prominently displayed. It's the same type of, strategy that you would use in any type of flea market or antique market. Again, some more of this. That is the quilted padded jacket, which I cannot remember the name of. I am blanking out on a lot of Japanese terms today. Sorry about that. And some boro in the background. So even if you just wander around to look, you'll see some. Honestly, these would be in a museum in the United States because they're so well done and they're pretty well preserved. So here is this one piece of boro. So this is something that has been patched over and over and over and over again. And I left this here as the little sample because you may recall that on our next Make Your Monday, we will be talking about boro and visible mending. And this piece that looks like a rag, and in fact, Japanese people go, why on earth are Americans buying it? I'm embarrassed. It belongs in the trash bin, not a museum. That thing was $1,000. Yeah. That piece there of boro, which is had been clothing and then became like a futon cover and then became rags, was $1,000 because Americans buy the weirdest stuff. That's all I can say. I mean, while I appreciate the process, I do not understand why this is so valuable, but that is the market rate, and these vendors definitely know the market rate. So these are some samples of things that I did buy. So I bought some, I will show you these on the camera a little bit later, but I bought some obijime, I bought yarn, these are mostly fabric scraps, and then also a haori jacket, which is one like I'm wearing right now. I will show you, when I get to the show and tell section, I'll show you the back. That one was a red one. I bought it for my mom, but it was the same price. Now the shibori technique, if you're familiar with hand dyeing, the technique leaves a little raised indentation on top of the fabric, and for that reason they cannot be laundered or dry cleaned. They can only be spot cleaned, and then you can remove the lining and clean the lining and then sew it back in again. That's so fussy that people don't like doing that. And so these haori are $10 a piece because people don't like the maintenance that comes with it. In fact, I'm sitting here sweating a little bit, one of these going, oh, it's going to be a real pain to actually clean this afterwards. But, the amount of work that goes into the shibori is stunning, and I think it's worth the purchase. But it's, you'll find those everywhere for the same price because everyone knows there's not a lot of market in something that's so hard to maintain. Do we have any questions about the Oedo antique market? I think it's fairly straightforward. I just wanted to give you guys a sample. And again, I didn't do a video because John Dobb has a fantastic video of it. But if you guys have any questions, or you want to ask me, do they have this particular thing or that type of thing, feel free to pop a question in the chat, because otherwise I'm going to move on to, let's be honest, the big showstopper, which are the shrine and temple sales. So shrine and temple sales are a different beast entirely from the two other types of markets that I've already shown you. They happen one day a month usually, and it'll be based on the date. So like one of them is the 21st of the month, every month. Doesn't matter if it's rain or shine, doesn't matter if it's a weekday or weekend, the 21st of the month is when that market is going to be. So this is a historical tradition. This goes back to the time when the temple or the shrine would have been the center of any neighborhood or community, and it would have been a traditional farmers market. So the farmers would have come in from the surrounding areas to sell all their produce at one time. The artisans would also, this would be a place where you would be able to, get your shoes mended or whatever else that you needed, knives sharpened, the skilled tradespeople would be there offering their services, offering their wares. If they weren't prosperous enough to have a storefront of their own, they would be bringing it to these particular temple or shrine sales. So that's where this tradition developed. And usually so that they wouldn't compete with each other, the city would regulate when these shrine and temple sales could be. That's how they got these weird dates assigned. But some of them that we're talking about had been over 1,000 years, these markets have been going on, and sometimes they only shut down because of World War II. But other than that, they have been going continuously for 1,000 years on the 25th of the month or whatever. These are a bit more like an American flea market, as far as there's pop-up tents and people bring all kinds of stuff. These are your bargain sales. It's definitely where you're going to get things that are inexpensive, that are cool, that are unique. And if you get the opportunity to go to a temple or shrine sale, except for, like I said, that Hanazono Jinja, it's one of my favorite shrines in Tokyo, but not one of my favorite shrine sales because it is weekly, so it's not quite so cool. But if you get to go to one of these big ones, and they will be listed in that like flea market list that I had from Best Living Japan, I would totally go. If you collect anything that is vintage, historical, if you're into textiles, if you're into prints, if you're into ceramics, I mean, good luck getting them back to America in one piece. But if that is your thing and you want to collect any type of vintage, antique, anything, temples and shrine sales are where to go. Because again, these are people who do pick them up at estate sales. They don't really have garage sales in Japan because they don't really have garages. But people are selling things off fairly inexpensively. People are buying them up in bulk, and then they're taking it to this once a month sale to try to make a small profit. But it's only going to be a small profit. These are not like professional antique dealers. These are, well, in America, we call them more like junk dealers. So we planned our entire trip to Kyoto to make sure that we could make it to at least one of these sales. And what's really nice about Kyoto is there is the two main famous for textile markets, because textiles are my thing. So that's what I was going for. They're on the 21st and 25th of the month. So we almost were able to make it to both of them. We didn't this time, but next time we definitely will try to hit both of them. But I'll be honest, I did so much damage to my wallet and my luggage space in just one of these markets that I was probably better off not going to both of them. The one that I went to was, I'll be showing you quite a bit of, but let me put you back on the slide of how to find where they are. Honestly, go in your search engine and just whatever city in Japan you're going to be in, type in city and flea market, city antique market, or just city and market, and it will give you a list of them. You want to know before you're, like, if this is one of the main things you want to do on your trip to Japan, if you really want to go and buy a whole bunch of antique textiles. Now, I should actually tell you a website. I'm going to type this in the chat, so bear with me. There is a store called Tangerine Mountain. And they go to San Japan. So if you do attend San Japan in San Antonio, you can see their pop-up shop. But these people, their entire business is going to Japan, buying up vintage textiles, usually clothes that are in wearable condition, but maybe have some kind of flaws. So yukata, kimono, haori, obi, etc. That's all they do. They go buy them up. They have a warehouse full of them in the United States, and you can order them from there. And especially if you're into that kind of thing, they have a sale that is on in, it's always on Black Friday weekend. So I think it's usually about 4 days, but you want to be there right the moment it opens, if possible, on Black Friday morning. Sometimes they don't open on Black Friday morning. Sometimes they wait until the next day, but like they'll have an announcement on Facebook, like the sale is going to open at such and such a time. You want to be there right then, because they will sell things by the pound. And you can buy a 20-pound or a 10-pound box. You only get to pick a color or a style. So you can pick yukata, or you can pick fabric scraps or whatever. You don't get to necessarily decide whether it's kimono, haori, or whatever, but you can get an entire box, like a 20-pound box, for I think they're about $30, and then shipping is about $30 because it's expensive. But let me back up on my slides a little bit. Got to switch into another window. What you will see a lot of, you see that woman in the middle. She's actually wearing a jacket. I cannot remember the name of it, but it is basically a raincoat that goes over a kimono and obi, and it keeps your kimono dry in the rain. And it's also an extra layer for when it's warm. They have thousands of those. So when you are in there, it's a nice double-breasted jacket. It's actually a cool garment that a lot of people in the United States have no idea what to do with. But if you buy these buy weight boxes from Tangerine Mountain, you'll get a lot of those in there. You'll also get kimono. I bought an entire box of yukata. They do tell you that these are what they consider to be seconds quality. So they do have what they consider to be perfectly wearable quality, as far as, there's no flaws that are visible, and they sell those individually. You can buy them off their website any time of year. They have them at San Japan. They're based in Colorado, but they go to different anime conventions and Japan related conventions all over the United States. So you can go try them on, and they'll help you find things that fit or suit you and teach you how to tie an obi and things like that. But those are their higher quality ones. The ones that they have in these blind boxes, they say are not in wearable condition. That is the quote that they use. That means there's a small stain, a tiny hole, something that you really have to look hard to find usually. I will say soy sauce is very difficult to get out of fabrics, and that is usually the problem. So there'll be I have one that on the hem of the garment, there's 2 little splotches. Like, I would never, ever have seen it if they hadn't said, oh, this has a soy sauce stain on it. You would not notice. So obviously in Japan, they're very fastidious about their clothing. That would be considered unwearable because it is a stain. There are ways to get soy sauce out. It is difficult, and you do have to do it by hand because most dry cleaners in the United States are not capable of doing it properly. But, if you're over here where we are not quite so fastidious about like the hems or the lining having a stain, then I'd say that was a great place. So for those of you who are into looking for vintage textiles and you want to find a discount and you can't go to Japan anytime soon because they're still not letting us in there, Tangerine Mountain can kind of help soothe that hungry beast. But I have digressed. So again, let's talk about how to find the markets. Again, if that is your main goal, you want to check this out before you even plan your trip, before you pick your dates. Because obviously, if it's only one day of the month, and you're there for 3 weeks, you could still completely miss that market. So check it out well in advance of when you're booking your tickets, if that's the kind of thing that is really interesting. I didn't mention there was also like the Tokyo Race Course Antique Market. I haven't been because it's enormous. I mean, apparently it has like 2,000 vendors in it, but it's also about 2 kilometers from the nearest tube station, or metro station, sorry, used to live in London, metro underground station, and that was just too far for me to walk or be pushed in the wheelchair. That was just a long way, and at that time, we weren't as proficient with using the bus system. I have since, on a more recent trip, gotten very accustomed to using the bus system, so I would do that in the future, but I'm just saying I have not been to the largest of the antique markets, but I am told that much like the Oedo Antique Market, these are professionals, and you're not going to find bargains there. So temple and shrine sales are still the place for the discount stuff. So unless you guys have any questions about how to find these. I mean, I do have the 2 Kyoto ones listed, and those will be in the notes that'll be on the Okashicon website after this presentation. Those 2 are the ones that are most famous for textiles, probably in all of Japan. Although, you know, whether that was amazing, there were just probably, 75 stalls that had vintage kimonos and vintage things, but they all had similar stuff. So I don't know that you necessarily need to go to these 2 in particular, but since I knew that's what you guys are interested in and that's what I'm interested in, I will give you the specific information about those 2 markets. And I happen to go to the one at Kitano Temmangu Jinja, and we'll show you some of I'll show you some pictures and then a little tiny bit of video after that. So again, feel free to ask questions, but this is just kind of my experience. Again, here's more of the Boro. I didn't even look at the price tag, but I feel like one of these was $3,000. I'm not sure if it was this one or if it was another one that my photo wasn't quite so good at, but this is what Boro is. It's pieces that have been patched and layered and mended, trying to keep this as a usable piece of fabric and try to use up as much scrap fabric as they have, just to, you know, be very frugal and obviously to respect the fabric itself, because fabric is very difficult to make in those times. So that is, you know, if hopefully by now you know what Boro is. We're not going to be making something quite that cool, but the concept of external patching, visible mending, and using sashiko stitching to create some decorative effects. You can see on there's some of the dark stitching going through there to kind of hold some of these fabrics onto each other. That's what we'll be talking about in the next Make Your Monday. But you guys probably aren't here for the Boro. You're here for looking at the rest of the stuff. We got there early in the morning, so this was fairly sparse when we first arrived. And you're probably also looking at the picture on the right going, but you said it was at a shrine. That looks like a house. It is. The main bits of the market are in the streets that completely surround the shrine. The shrine itself does have some stalls, and in fact, that's where the food stalls are, which we will be showing at the end. I mean, it was fantastic. It was like any festival that we'd attended, you know, food on a stick and, you know, all of the usual kind of Japanese festival food, hot dogs and kakigori, shaved ice and all that type of stuff. But that was the only bit that was in the temple or the shrine grounds itself. The rest of it was in the street, about 3 or 4 streets that looped around the temple or the shrine grounds itself, probably under the control of the shrine. But this market itself isn't really run by the shrine. It's just been hosted at the shrine for a very long time. So as you can see, these are just pop-up tents like you would find at any kind of market, craft fair, art fair kind of thing. And people have just brought whatever it is that they happen to have. And there are probably over 1,000 of these individual booths. And then I didn't show you the video because I wasn't sure if it would be disrespectful to show this video, but some of the priests at the shrine do walk around about every hour chanting and clapping and other, you know, parts of their blessing rituals. And so you can just sit there and watch this procession of priests going by, sort of blessing the entire environment. And that was quite moving to me. But again, I wasn't sure if it would be disrespectful to show you the video of that, so I haven't done that. But as you can see, early in the morning, I think, and you know, I hate mornings, but hey, it was worth it for this type of thing. I think it was probably 8 in the morning when we got there. It was fairly empty. And then by the time we left around lunchtime, it was wall-to-wall people. Part of it was school groups that were there, and that, Japanese school children and even more Chinese school children coming over on their trips. Those are obnoxious, but middle school children are not, you know, not known for their polite behavior anywhere in the world. But yeah, there were huge crowds of them swarming everywhere. That was kind of a downside to Kyoto in general. So many school trips happen if you're there in April, which we were. But, you know, the rest of the market itself, not the food stall area, was fairly easy to get around. You didn't have, you know, you didn't have to push or pull on the outer edges of it. Not seeing any more questions, so I'm just going to keep moving on. So as you can see, this is all kinds of random stuff. This is, you can actually see the shrine, one of the shrine bits on one side, and you see a whole stand of ceramics there. They had a mix of things. So they had a mix of vintage and new. They had some art, some modern, current art with the artist there selling it. It's some really cute stuff. I got a really nice sculpted, like structural kind of tunic that I almost wore today, but unfortunately it's the bottom that looks cool. So if I'd worn it, you wouldn't have really gotten the full effect. But so I bought some things that were handmade by some of the artists who were there. And then also they have all kinds of vintage, historical, antique, junk even. They have dried herbs. They have, pretty much everything. Bric-a-brac. Bric-a-brac and tchotchkes is basically the best way to describe some of this. But it was so cool. I mean, I cannot do this market justice. It was an amazing experience. I could have bought a mountain's worth of stuff to bring home because it was fairly inexpensive as well. Baskets and masks and toys and pretty much anything you can think of. If it was 15 years or older, they had it. Sometimes it was brand new and they wanted to pass it off as 15 years or older. Obviously, caveat emptor, this is stuff out of people's attics. They picked it up at estate sales or, abandoned houses. I don't know where all this stuff comes from, but, old people have hordes of stuff. I think that's just a universal rule. I will be one of those old people, so I can't say too much about it. But, you see teapots and just everything. Like I said, if you collect something that is Japanese, they'll have it. And it'll be probably the best prices you will find. So the tamari balls that they had, these are obviously vintage because they were quite dingy in color, even though they've been stored in glass. On the right-hand side, you see what looks like a little Ferris wheel. That is actually a silk reeling wheel, so that as you're pulling strands of silk out of the silk cocoons, I totally would have bought these things, but I just had no way to get them home safely because as a fiber artist, to be able to buy some of these traditional tools is, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but getting them home is just so expensive. Again, these are just some of the bobbin wheels. So again, when they reel off the silk, they would have done it on the particularly large Ferris wheel looking thing, hand crank thing. But then after they dye them, they put them onto these bobbins. And then they become in these little spools for weaving or embroidery. So unfortunately, the only thing I was able to pick up was some of these spools, but you can see all the stages in the production. They had just boxes and buckets and all kinds of different opportunities to go buy antique textile production tools or hand tools, everything. I mean, pretty much everything I can think of. I'm rambling, I'm repeating myself, but this was such an exciting time and such an exciting place to go. You can see that there were kimono, there were obi, there were obijime. These were, for the most part, polyester kimono and nylon obi. Now, there's a reason why nylon obi are preferred because they need to be quite stiff or an obi will not keep its shape. So silk ones can be difficult to use. I do have one, but they are kind of difficult to maintain. But even today, or even, basically from the time that nylon came into Japan a little over 100 years ago, these became quite popular for obi because they can do the very intricate weaving of them, but they will last longer. And also they require less maintenance and they wipe clean. You don't have to worry about stains so much. So even if you're wearing a very high-end kimono that is, hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, you still may have a nylon obi. So don't look down on the obi just because it's made of nylon instead of silk. That is pretty much what most people who wear kimono will be wearing, is a nylon one. However, a polyester kimono is hot and uncomfortable, especially in Texas. But that's what you're mostly going to find at these markets. And they are in huge piles on the floor. For the inexpensive ones. So some will be hung up just to get your attention. And then you'll go deeper into the stall, and there's literally just a pile about 2.5 feet high of every type of, kimono, haori. I found some trousers. I found all kinds of interesting things, and they're literally just piled up. And it's like everything's the same price. Just dig and find what you want. I did find a silk kimono in there. I was incredibly lucky, but it does have several soy sauce stains at the bottom. But generally speaking, it's going to be polyester. These are going to be the things that, I have a friend whose mom still kept all these things in those horribly toxic 1970s mothballs to preserve it, but it's polyester. Moths aren't going to eat it. But, these were what people were wearing all the time. This is what the older women are still wearing. Fortunately not in the summer, but most of the rest of the year, they may still be wearing these polyester kimonos. So they're bright, they're vivid, they're gorgeous. I like them for cutting up and repurposing the textiles, but you're going to find a lot of that at these markets. If you want something that is silk, they will have them, but they're going to be a lot more expensive. I will just tell you, they're going to be a lot more expensive, unless you're like me and you're just lucky. I can tell by touching the fabric what it's made out of. And so I just kind of stuck my hand in the pile and just went feeling inside. I couldn't even see what it was. Just went feeling inside of there, and finally found out of, probably 20 of these different stalls, just digging through the piles, I found one. So I think I was just incredibly lucky. But, for the most part, it looks like a kimono. It wears like a kimono. It'll be sized like a traditional kimono, which means short, small people. But usually the extra fabric is still on the inside in the seams, so you can have them remade into something that would fit you. Or, refashioned. A lot of refashioning is very popular now, but that's another topic for another day. They have other things. So again, some of these were the artisans who were bringing their new wares. My husband collects wooden spoons to some extent, or likes wooden spoons and bamboo spoons. So he picked up several things from the spoon dealer that you can see the photo of on the left. And then also on the right-hand side, there's people who had repurposed some textiles to make little brooches and little flowers and things like that. I picked up some of those for my mom. She really loved it. But that was just ways that they were upcycling some of this fabric that they've gotten from some of these other dealers. Also, I can never remember the word for it, but when you wear an obi, there's a little colorful piece of fabric that goes in the very top of the sash. And it's often made of shibori, and it's usually very vivid. But it's basically so that you can, kind of shove stuff in your obi instead of having a purse, and then that kind of covers it up. And it also kind of covers the gap between the obi and the kimono and adds just a little bit of colorful interest. And then the obijime is the cord that goes around the front. But that little sash thing, they have obiage is quite possibly the term. That sounds about right. They have those everywhere. I will show you some in the show and tell. You can get them for $3. Again, a lot of them are this type of shibori that you can't really wash or dry clean correctly. But I have some that are just silk. I have not ironed them, so when I show you in show and tell, please do not look down upon them because they're wrinkly. They are wrinkly because they're in giant piles, and I've never bothered to iron them. But you can buy an obiage. I'm going to use that term. We're going to assume that's correct. That is, about 3 feet. Well, no, more than 3 feet, maybe 3.5 feet long fabric, and it's about 25 centimeters wide. But obviously, you can cut that up. So I can tell you right now that a lot of these little brooches were made from repurposing these obiage that they'd bought for, 300 yen down a neighboring shop, and then repurposed into these little brooches. So there's a lot of that type of upcycling going on. And then again, I have several photos of this. I bought a lot of this. I didn't dig around to find it, but this is gorgeous embroidery silk. Not the type of embroidery that you do for sashiko, but the proper gorgeous I can't remember the name of it. I don't really care. But any type of silk embroidery. It's very fine silk. You can weave with it. You can embroider with it. The luster on it is just to die for. And these were, I think, $3 a piece, which if you know anything about getting silk thread, that should blow your mind completely. I wouldn't use it in a sewing machine, but certainly for hand sewing, it was, I think these are all just leftovers from weaving, but they were sold as embroidery thread, so I'm not sure. But I would pay that much just for the bobbin, never mind the thread. But it's just, they had boxes and boxes of stuff that you could just collect. And then again, so I'm coming to the end of my discussion of this particular market. They had all of these food stalls. This was the time, it was my first time to have fresh charcoal roasted bamboo shoot. She just sits there and cooks it for you. That was really delicious. But they had all the sort of usual stuff. They had takoyaki, which I can't have because I'm allergic to octopus. They had, let's see, my husband had like a bratwurst, a really spicy bratwurst, to be honest. All this sort of usual stuff, candied fruit and okonomiyaki and sort of, you know, all the usual suspects is all I can say. But it was just happened to be when fresh bamboo shoots were in season. So I really, really enjoyed that. And we kept looking at other festivals and never found any other places that were doing it in quite the same way. So we were really lucky. And then again, this is just another photo. So you can see on one side is the kakigori, and the other side there are some food vendors. So I believe that was dried fruits and things on the other side. And then if you look straight ahead back towards the torii gate for the shrine, you can see the parade of school children coming our way, which was just not that great. Let me check the chat. So Misty says there was festival food. I don't know what it's called, but it was yum, potato cooked in miso and then opened up with a little butter. Yeah, they do they do all kinds of things with baked potatoes. So they have baked potatoes, sweet potatoes. They have all different ways that they produce them because they're all cooked in these stalls. I mean, the most that they will have is like a roasting tin that they've been baking in kind of all day. But it's yeah, I agree. It's so good. Sometimes it had like sweet potato fries, and they're like, I don't know, the entire length of the sweet potato, big chunky sweet potato fries. Festival food is its own kind of genre of food. And I'm not going to say I have never had anything bad because I think the candied fruits are just too sweet for my taste. It's not that it was bad. It was just really, really sweet. But like I've had oden, I've had okonomiyaki, I've had, you know, I've tried most of the things there and I have never been disappointed. I never had like bad quality food. I just had some food that I wasn't to my taste. Okay, so I also have a short video of this, and if I can get that up, I will show you a brief little sample of what it was like at this particular market. So again, this was early in the morning. There's not a lot of crowds. I'm going to tell you, because my husband's over here, look for his resting murder face, as I call it. Here we go. Does he look like he's about to kill somebody? I think he looks like he's about to kill somebody. That's just his natural face expression. We have photos going back to when he was the age of 2 where he looks like he's about to murder his younger sister. But yeah, resting murder face. But here you go. There's more bric-a-brac and stuff. They had books, they had collectibles. As you can see, we're going to walk into a textile shop. I would love to have taken the Tanaki home with me, but, you know, fragile and huge and junk, as some of that looks like to me. Some of that just looks like garbage. But, you know, there is a home for everything. They have just like old shirts, like old men's shirts for $3. I mean, they look terrible, but there's still people buying them. Probably those young hipsters. And then these stalls here, so they've just got yukata, kimono, and some haori there. So that's, there were dozens upon dozens of those shops. And that was one that didn't have the giant pile of things, but the prices were all the same. So let me move back to my next slide here, which is sample prices. I think a lot of y'all want to know what you can expect to pay. I mean, am I right? If that's if you have other things that you would like to know the sample prices for, I can try to remember, but these were the things that I was most interested in. So again, the most expensive thing was the antique textiles. As I said, some of these were thousands of dollars. Some of them were, you know, scraps for just a few hundred yen. So it could be anywhere between a couple dollars and, you know, your entire bike. Thank you. I'm glad that it's useful for budgeting purposes. So kimono, in those piles of kimono are in most of those shops. 1,000 yen was the average price for those. Now, obviously, if someone had a special silk one, they would have it hanging. They would have a price on there. But remember, kimono are fairly heavy. They do weigh about 2 or 3 pounds each. You get 50 pounds per suitcase on the way back. So that is also something that you have to be calculating while you're shopping. I will show you some of my selection of things that I purchased. But some of the antique textiles I was able to find smaller pieces of for, again, a few dollars. And I would buy quite a few different ones. I have quite a selection. I'm only going to show you a few of them today. The kimono, 1,000 yen. So that roughly works out to about $10, sometimes less, but if there's tax, you know, but still just kind of mentally in your head, think about $10. Obi, sometimes they try to charge you 1,000 for some of the nicer ones, but you can definitely find hundreds of obi for 500 yen. So again, about $5. The obijime, which are the cords, anywhere between 100 and 300. I mean, I have found them for 100. I have paid 300. You know, both are fairly fair prices. I wouldn't quibble because some of them are obviously much more intricate than others, and they're still mostly handmade, some, you know, for the most part. And then the obiage, if that is the correct term for them, again, I have paid at that market that I said back at United Nations University where I said it was overpriced. I have paid like $10 for an obiage. And then I was kicking myself because I got to this market in Kyoto where they're all $3. So, you know, I can't say that I totally regret it because it just happened to be the right color for a gift that I wanted. But yeah, people go buy things at these markets, at the temple and shrine sales, and then they take them to the antique markets and they double or triple the price. So if you have the opportunity to go to a temple or shrine sale, these are the prices that you can expect to pay. And now you know if you're going somewhere else, anything more than that, they are probably ripping you off in some way or other. Now, if that's all you can access because you're short on time, you know, you will pay for the convenience of it, and that's fine. I have also found kimono for less in an actual shop. So in Asakusa, when you're going, remember how I always say that the way to get from from Asakusa, from Sensoji Temple to Kapabashidori is to go to Sensoji Temple, up to the top, hang a left, go past a bunch of stores, past Don Quixote, and then you'll end up at Kapabashi. Well, sorry, this is probably not left for you guys. That's right for you guys. Anyway. When you're going down that street, there are stores that sell geta and other things. Those are quite reasonably priced. And in fact, one of the kimono that I got, it was polyester, but it was 500 yen. So you can find in some shops these same prices. And I would just keep these in mind and decide anything more than that, is it really going to be worth it for you or not? So I'm just going to pop up this last screen here for a minute while I gather up some of these things to show you. Remember my email if you would like to be informed when I have any of these presentations coming up. Obviously, we have the Make Your Mondays, we have the Anime Afternoons, we have these Japan stories. Let me just start collecting things off the floor here. Okay. And I know some of you guys are already following me on Twitter or Instagram, and you can always use the Juliann Japan hashtag for my travel photos. I have not been posting on there lately. I understand and apologize that you guys probably want to see this stuff, but I've been having a severe case of the COVID blah, and it's, you know, kind of depressing to look at all my Japan stuff when I'm not able to go to Japan. Anyway, let's switch to the camera on my face so I can show you some of the show and tell. If you guys have been getting ads throughout this Twitch session, let me know, because they notified us that Twitch was going to be throwing ads in there. We just don't know when, and it's harder for us to kind of prevent them. That's why it may be more important to have a subscription in the future if you don't want to miss various parts of the presentation. But please let us know in the chat if you're seeing an ad. But let me show you some of the stuff that I got. So this is a weird thing that you're gonna be like, what on earth is that? In fact, I was just asked earlier today, is that tulle? Is that chiffon? This is bashofu, which is a banana fiber. It is a non-edible banana tree that grows in Okinawa, and they make it into this super see-through fabric that they then use for outer kimono for the very humid times in Okinawa. And I found this huge piece of it for 350 yen, so $3.50 basically. And I have a teacher who teaches how to do bashofu weaving, and she was amazed that anyone A had this size piece available, and B was selling it for such a low price. Now, it's not got fancy weaving or fancy dyeing on it, but the bashofu itself, it is very stiff. If you've ever made like millinery with that like really stiff straw that I cannot remember the name of, it kind of has that definitely crispy, crunchy kind of feeling. Obviously, when they made kimono out of this, they would have worn it with linings, not only for modesty, but just because it's really scratchy. But as a mixed media textile artist, I have all kinds of stuff to play with. And that was, honestly, to me, that's kind of the most unique item that I got. And then some things that I got from the Tokyo Oedo market. I remember I told you that you could get some of these offcuts for not too bad a price. This was one, I think I paid $10 for this, and you're seeing about a third of it. So this is the kasuri or ikat weaving. Again, I bought it because I have taken workshops from Ryukyu Heritage Textiles, Shari and Kirchhoff, on how to do these types of kasuri weaving. That's upside down. You can see the birds, but this is, everything is resist dyed in the thread before it's woven, and then the patterns come out as you weave it. So that was a lot of fun. And then on that same type of thing, it's also called ikat in other parts of the world. These are some little old lady pants. I saw the Obasan like work pants, and I really wanted some, and I still don't know where to buy them. This one, for some reason, the tag is on the outside. This is the washing instructions tag with, you know, the temperature and do not dry clean kind of stuff. For some reason, this is on the outside of the garment. It's not the wrong way out. It just literally sits on the outside of your leg. This I found in one of those giant piles. So I did pay $10 for these. They are rather large. So it did say 2 extra large, which in American sizes, that's like size 14. It's a 2XL. Now, at the time, I was 12. Now I'm a 10. So these are way, way too big for me. But it's just a simple elastic in the top. And so at some point, I will get around to replacing the elastic and won't be able to wear them again. But I've never been able to find like workwear type stuff. Again, some more stuff that I got. This is one of these obiage. You'll see it's not terribly long. I'm going to bring this up to the camera. I don't know if you can see, but every one of these dots has been hand tied, and it has a certain texture to it. Let me take off my jacket, and you can see the same. We went to the shibori class in the Shibori Museum, and it was pretty amazing. But the amount of work that goes into hand tying each one of these little dots will make you cry. I mean, it is astounding in every possible way, just how much effort goes into making these. And especially you've got to lay out the pattern, then you've got to tie the different dots and tie other things. So for the fact that you can buy these hori, and a hori, if you're not familiar with it, is a jacket. It goes over a kimono. So it's a little bit sort of like upper thigh length on me. I wear it like a cardigan. And I have been sweating, so that is just going to sit out and air dry for a while because, again, like I said, you can't really clean it. You just got to air it out and spot clean it and just do the best that you can with these things. I bought other fabrics. So this is another obiage. Again, this one should have been ironed because it would have shown off better. But this is a different type of shibori with the little plum blossom. I know it's not showing up terribly well. This is a beautiful habitized silk. It's absolutely gorgeous. Again, I think this was in a collection with some of these others. This is another shibori obiage. This got different colors. It's got some purple and blue and green. Oops, that's the more colorful side. And I think these were in one of those grab piles, 3 for 1,000 yen. So 3 for $10. A much better price than what I paid in Tokyo. Also, because I just collect textile scraps in general, here is a huge pile of textiles. They've been loosely sewn together, but all different kinds of, these are all polyester, but different colors and patterns and scraps, and this was 500 yen. So it's great. Again, as a mixed media textile artist, I have a bunch of different things to work with. I hate brown, so this would be given away to a friend. But, you know, you could just find the scraps if that's your kind of thing. That's fairly easy to come by as well. So these are some of my precious purchases. You have to cover up my face to see this. These are hand dyed. Most of these are polyester, although I did get one that was silk, and the guy was like, "Oh, it's silk. Are you sure you want that?" And I was like, "Of course I want that." But these are all hand dyed in the Yuuzhan dye technique. These are just offcuts. So these would have been left over from making kimono. They're they average 3 to 4 feet long, so they're not huge. But these are $10 to $12 each. Let me show you. This is not the most exciting one. I'm showing you this one first because some of the others are way cooler. In fact, I've already given some away, but this is the same type, and you can still see the price tag on there. So yeah, this was $10. This is a smaller piece, but again, the depth of the hand dye and then the metallic foiling on there, this is amazing. And if I had this, even though this is a polyester, it's a very lightweight polyester. If I had a kimono made out of this, I would probably still wear it, although the lining can be. So this is clearly on the bottom. It's probably a furasore. So these would have been on the sleeves. So the big long hanging sleeves that only unmarried women can wear. So that rules me out, huh? But yeah, so the top of this is just black. So I bought a lot of these just to put on my walls as wall hangings, along with my tenugoi. Have I done that yet? No. I'm really good at buying stuff and then not using it. It's a skill. It's a super exciting skill. Let me see what else I can show you. So I have some obi that I bought, again, at that particular market, the Tenmangu market. This I bought. This is nylon, but hopefully you can see how beautiful the brocade is in there. This was 500 yen, so about $5. This is the silk shibori, but it has been repurposed into an obi. So this is silk on the outside, but it has been, at some point in time, it has been flattened out. So it's been washed or dry cleaned or something. And so there's no more texture in this. The pattern is still there, but there's no texture in here. And it has had some kind of really stiff inner lining added on the inside to become an obi. But it's still quite pretty. I can wear it as a proper obi. It has the stiffness to it. But I also can use it as home decor, which is what I really got it for. There's also a book that I do not own yet. I hope to buy it in the near future, but it's just on repurposing obi into making them into like pillows and home decor. So it's all about upcycling obi and obi pieces, because sometimes only like the front part of the obi is really nice, the part that would go around your stomach, and the rest of it is a bit plain. But there is a woman who has done an entire book on that, and I look forward to that at some point in the future. I'm only familiar with it in ebook format. And now you guys probably want to see my kimono, right? Again, remember, I have not ironed these, so they're gonna look, they were in the jumble pile, so they've been very crunched up and mangled. I probably wouldn't iron them. I would steam them. But I thought about hanging them up on my backdrop, but as you can see, some bits are interesting, but for the most part, if I had it hanging behind me, all you'd see were the wrinkles. But this is kind of a lavender pearl gray. This is silk, but it has some beautiful, there's the stain. That is, I think, probably not a stain. I think I can get that up. But that is in the back at the bottom. And like I said, I have not tried to launder this or to clean it up, but because I used to be a professional costume run crew, I do know a lot about cleaning techniques. So that is on my to-do list because I want to get this cleaned up and I want to hang this on the wall. But I bought this one, which is this beautiful pearl gray with a slight lavender sheen. And then that's where I got the white obi to go with, because I think that will be really lovely. I do not have all the undergarments that go with it. You will not find the undergarments in the secondhand stores. So there are quite a few things, you know, the jubon and the haneri and all the other accessories that go with it. You will not find that in the markets or secondhand stores because, I mean, it's underwear. So no one's going to resell underwear in any type of way, even though it's not underwear the way we think of it, but it's like a lining layer, but still, you need to buy that new. And then the final kimono, this is polyester, but it has a really lovely sheen. This is way too short for me to wear as a kimono, but I'm just going to wear it in what's called Angura Kei, which is the street fashion style that is taking like goth aesthetic and then recycled and upcycled traditional Japanese clothing. And so I'm going to make more of like a goth space outfit with this just as an outer like duster jacket to upcycle it, because I can wear this without folding it back over. So, you know, it kind of hits the ground on me instead of having enough space to sort of hike up and have the obi on it. So I can just wear it as a long coat. So it must have been a woman who was about 4.5 feet tall. I mean, it would have been a little old lady who had this to begin with because it's just not long enough. But if you're upcycling into like what they now call a kimono robe, I'm not sure how much that is an affectation, but that is somebody that I know on Twitter. They're called kimono robe, and they're basically taking these kimono that are too short to be worn as kimono and turning them into like duster coats and long cardigans and things and calling it kimono robe. So that's what I'm going to call it, and that's what I'm going to do with this. This was 500 yen, and this was in the shop in Asakusa, but because I knew that was a really good price, I went ahead and bought it. And I think that's probably all that I have to show you today, because I felt like showing you anything more was just turning into gloating. So do you guys have any questions? Any comments? Oh, wait, I didn't show you my obijime. Now, if you went to the Kumihimo class, you have already seen these. But again, I have a pink one to go with some of the pink obi, and also because I have yukata that has a pink obi, especially yukata obi. And then I have this sparkly silver one to go with that sparkly, sort of shiny white and the silver kimono. So I'm watching the chat. I'm not seeing anything. Glad y'all are still with me. I think that's about, it's pretty much all that I had planned to talk about these markets. I will say that I do have a book recommendation this month. This does not specifically have markets in it. I couldn't find a book that really talks about markets in particular. Okay, now we got some things. Raina is speaking in the chat. Let me respond to these comments. Is it difficult to find kimono yukata for more curvy, taller Western bodies? If you're looking for feminine styles, then it can be difficult. However, if you don't mind men's kimono, which are a bit more sedate, then that is easier. And also, if you're looking for yukata in particular, I wouldn't even bother with going secondhand, because if you go to the Ameyokucho market, which is near Ueno Station in Tokyo, you can get brand new ones for about $30. And they have those specifically for Westerner sizes. So that is not as difficult. Finding kimono that are for Western sizes is a challenge. I'm not going to lie, because Japanese people are just not the size that we are. So, you know, you saw my husband in his resting murder face. He is considered a 3 extra large in Japan, and we found very little of anything that he could wear. I could find some haori, sorry, not haori. I can't remember it. Just blanking out on all these terms. Well, I guess it is a haori, but it's the type, the festival jacket type. And he found some of those that he could wear, but that doesn't like close over the belly. So that was a little bit easier, but it's the same reason I didn't want to talk about thrift stores in too much depth, is that if you are an American female, size 12 or above, size 12 is on the border. You'll be able to find things in the size 12. That'll be okay. But size 14 can be, yes, a happy coat. Thank you very much, Misty. Happy coat we could find in larger sizes. Howery you can find in larger sizes. Those are the jackets. Those raincoat things that I can never, I think it's called hand ten. I'm not entirely sure that's the name of them. In fact, even people in Japan never remember the name of them. But those you can find in larger sizes. But kimono in particular, I think your best bet is you get one, and then when they make a kimono, they don't usually waste the extra fabric. They tuck it up in some way, or certainly the selvages, they will just keep the selvage in there so they can be let out into larger sizes. Now, length is more difficult. Sometimes they will cut off the length. But if you want something that's just the width to go around that, that is possible, I think, to buy one and then to refashion it in some way. But in general, I think you're probably going to look at purchasing a garment that you're going to reuse in a way that's maybe not, you know, this like the robe, the open worn robe, as opposed to a proper kimono that has all the different, you know, the folds and wearing the obi in that way. It is a challenge. You can sit there and try them on if you know roughly how your size is. I do know that Tangerine Mountain specializes in helping people find those sizes, and those sizes are there. But they're not going to be in the really bright, vibrant colors. They're going to be in the more subdued colors because men tend to prefer those. There's really no difference between a men's kimono or yukata and a women's kimono or yukata in the construction of the garment. In a men's yukata, the obi is a little different. But as far as the way that a yukata is made, it's very similar. So I have a lot of ones that are technically men's, but they're white with, you know, some indigo colored, I mean, they're probably printed for the price I paid for them. But, you know, some blue flowers printed on them. Technically, that's a men's garment that, you know, I don't think anybody would know. So I'm not sure if that's fully answered your question. I think certainly you can find things that will fit you. You just may not find really flashy, exciting ones. But again, most of the stuff that we're talking about, I'm going to be honest. Now, I believe that you, Reina, are up in the Northeast and you're not here in Texas. But if you were here in Texas, I would not recommend wearing these polyester obi at all here. It's hot and polyester doesn't breathe and it's really uncomfortable. And I just, you know, unless you're going to be going to a formal activity in really freezing air conditioning, or you're going somewhere in the deepest, darkest parts of January at night, polyester is just too hot. Yeah, Montreal, polyester would work for you up there. So that would be okay. And like I said, it's very, very hit and miss. These are all random jumbly sizes, but it's, I don't know what else to say. I think you can. You'll have to look a little bit harder. But certainly there is a huge trend right now in taking kimono and then recycling them into haori or recycling them into other garments that are worn slightly differently, because obviously there are so many little old ladies out there that are passing away and having these collections, and people want to retain the life of these textiles, that they're being used in, like I said, the Angara Kei and some of the other new styles of sort of Japanese inspired fashion. So if that's not what you're looking for, and you just want like a traditional kimono worn in the traditional way, you'll just have to look a little harder is all. But you know, the other thing about curviness, now curviness is an issue because kimono don't look good with large bust lines. So you do have to pad out, because they're meant for somebody who's sort of flat up and down, but they make padding. I think it's uncomfortable, but that's what you're expected to wear with a kimono. Yukata, not so much, but with the kimono, you are expected to have layers of padding so that basically, you know, your front, your chest, and your obi is all completely flat, and you're just a big barrel shape. But that is true. Even if you're Japanese and large busted, they still expect you to wear that padding to create a flat front. So in that way, the curviness isn't as much of an issue. It's just whether it closes and reps, you know, has enough overlap to stay modest in the front. So thanks for the question. I hope that has answered your question. Again, just going back to this book, again, this is the book of the month. It is called Soul of Tokyo, and it is by Yongle's Publishing. Femi and Amandine Pechido, Pechida. I will put this up on the website later. The reason why I recommend this book this month is because if you are interested in just exquisite things, so these are not markets, but this is like a place where you can go, hidden gems. So these people are based in Paris. They went to over 1,000 places in Tokyo to find just the coolest, most interesting locations. This is the Itoya paper store, which I did not go into because I would have spent way too much money in. But like hidden peasant food. It's kind of hard to explain this book because it is everywhere. It's got art. It's got flower markets and cafes. It's got like specialty tofu manufacturers. It's got gardens. But these are just sort of 30 of the most exquisite, I think it's 30, yeah, 30 of the most exquisite places to visit in Tokyo. Unfortunately, this was not available in an ebook format when I bought it. I think it probably still not. It does retail for $14.95. And it is just a gorgeous book filled with really lovely places. And I've had the benefit to have a lot of these, but like there's somebody who it's basically their house and they just have a couple of individual people come in for dinner. You can make reservations there for dinner. And then they have some little bits of information about Japanese culture, like how to go to an onsen, things like that. So just again, really nice book of the month. And remember, YouTube channel of the month is Only in Japan by John Dahl. So I went well over the 1 hour. Of course, as you guys knew, I was going to. I think that's all that we pretty much have for you today. Let me just check your notes. I just want to remind you guys that the next Make Your Monday on Boro will be October 12th at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. We'll be doing more of the visible mending style of things, but basically external patching, looking at the Boro tradition so that when you are mending a garment, you are getting more wear out of it, but you're not trying to hide the fact that it has been mended or upcycled or, had a second chance of life. So I thank you guys for being with me today. I hope that you've had a good time. And thank you so much for being part of the Okashicon family and the Okashicon Online family. And if you have any questions, again, feel free to email me. You've got my email address on the bottom of the screen, or you can contact me on, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, etc. Thanks so much. We really appreciate you all. And I will see you either at Make Your Monday or at Anime Afternoons or back here again next month. We are hoping to do a special on Daiso next month. We can't guarantee it. If we can't get an exclusive with Daiso, we will probably just talk about bargain shopping in general. So like Daiso, Don Quixote, 3 Coins, all of those cool places. So hope to see you again next month. Thanks again. Goodbye.